Welcome to the Wolf and the Doctor podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Curry, alongside my co-host, Dr. John Devereaux.
And we got a really exciting conversation that we're planning to have today. It's kind of like a follow-up from our last episode. Last episode, I think we talked about the 6 things that'll mess you up in business. So we got a lot of good feedback from that. So we figured we'd do like a part 2 with talking about the 6 things that will help you to have success in not just business, but, hopefully life overall. Now, before we get into those 6 topics, let's do our quote of the week. So the quote for this week comes from Zig Ziglar. He says that if you are not willing to learn, no one can help you. If you are determined to learn, no one can stop you. And when I was reading this quote earlier in this week before we started recording, I was like, man, that really does sum you up. Yeah. As our listeners know, you and I, we talk all the time, and I can say that you are honestly one of the most determined individuals that I personally know. And the other thing is, you're constantly learning, which is why, I was like, man, let me throw this quote out to Glenn. And right. Not only with just the real estate, the photography that we talked about, but even the investing and just everything in between. So when you hear a quote like that, what comes to mind for you?
I agree 100%, man. If you're not willing to learn, bro, there's nobody can help you to grow. Nobody can force it for you. I mean, they can't determine your future, nothing. Because you're not taking in the knowledge that's needed to better yourself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not something that somebody can force you to do like anything else in life, right? That's something that you got to be willing or wanting to do. Because if you want to, then you'll put in more effort, more time to kind of accomplish those goals.
Yeah. And I know for me, just in my profession, as a professor, I'm always learning. And I want to be a lifelong learner. I never want to be stagnant in the disciplines that I teach. Yeah. Or, with even the material, the supplemental stuff that I use. I want to always learn new ways to be innovative, new ways to help the material to kind of hit a little bit better for my students. And then, of course, in business, you have to always be learning because you're in an environment that's always changing. You remain stagnant, man, stuff's going to pass you up.
And I say that all the time, man. I think I had put up a quote maybe a couple weeks back, and it was just saying pretty much you have to be a forever student of your craft, right? And that's true across the board because the moment you think you know it all, you will fail, right? And I think I used to be like that, especially starting off business. And I was like, yo, I know what I'm doing. And I used to always find myself coming at a roadblock, right? Because I thought I knew it all. But the moment I had to switch up my mindset, right? I had to switch up my mindset to be willing to learn, to take in information and be a student. And once I did that, man, I said, you know what? For the rest of my life, I'm going to be a forever student in my whole career path, my journey, and anything that I do, man.
So, and that's interesting that you bring that up, switching up your mindset, because as we talk about these 6 steps to success, the first one is building a growth mindset. So, I mean, that's why it's kind of interesting that you brought it up, even though we haven't talked about this yet.
Yeah.
So, why was that so important, I guess, for you to build that mindset? And then, how did you build that growth mindset?
I think the first thing you have to do, man, is you have to be willing to change, right? Because there's ultimately 2 different type of mindsets, right? There's the growth mindset, and then there's the fixed mindset. So for me, I didn't want to be stuck in that fixed mindset, right? And that fixed mindset is it's never growing, right? It's whatever you learned up until that point, that's it, that's all, and this will be forever what you know, right? That growth mindset is being able to adapt, being able to change, being able to grow, and being able to take in criticism, right? Constructive criticism, and being able to implement that to be able to grow. So, man, for me, I learned that, and the reason why I learned that is because I failed. I failed early on in my career because I thought I knew it all. And then there was somebody real close to me said, hey, look, in order to really grow, you have to keep learning. And, man, that changed the game for me.
And that's interesting because when we were talking last week about one of the 6 things that can mess you up, and we did discuss ego, or that unhealthy amount of ego to the point where you think you know it all. And when you are operating like that in business, I mean, it is a really quick way to, you know, get humbled, you know.
Yeah. Quick.
So when you talk about like your failures and things like that, and we constantly preach like your failures aren't necessarily a bad thing, because it kind of points you in the direction of things that, or the way that you should go, or helps to identify things that need to be changed within your business or within the process, within your life, you know. So how do you extract the learning experiences, I guess, from those failures? How is it? Because
it's interesting, because when we were on live a couple weeks ago, my wife made a comment on there. She said, failure is data, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, that's how I look at it, right? Any failures that I have is data, right? It's tangible data that I can use in order to fix whatever it is that I failed at, so that I don't fail at it again. So, I mean, that's exactly how I do it. As soon as I fail at something, I figure out why I failed, how I failed, and how to prevent myself from failing again.
Right. And as an economist, I love data, you know, first and foremost. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, all of the experiences that we have in life and in business is used to help predict how we should move in the future.
Absolutely.
You know? So, yeah, I mean, we can't never be, I guess, too hard on ourselves, you know, when we do, I guess, stumble a little bit. Because I won't even call it failing. It's just a stumbling block. You know, the important thing is, you know, how do you move past that? And for the people who are following along, because we just kind of jumped right into like our first topic, just because you kind of gave us a really good segue. Like I said, even though you didn't know what was on the list, but the 6 points. Let me just list them out for our listeners and viewers. The first one is build a growth mindset. The second one is improve your emotional intelligence. The third one is develop mental toughness. The fourth one is strengthen your willpower. The fifth one is focus on intrinsic motivation. And then the last one is nurture traits linked to high rewards. So, like I said, we kind of touched on that first one with building a growth mindset. But with the second one, we're talking about improving your emotional intelligence. You kind of touched on this last week when we were talking about
emotional stability.
Emotional stability. I was like, I was going to forget it. But yeah. So why do you think that it's important to have that emotional stability and improving your emotional intelligence when you're operating in business?
Man, because that's a good question, man, because I think oftentimes, I mean, it's human nature, right? We make decisions based off emotions, but I think the moment you're able to take control of your emotions, I think you'll be a better business person overall. Because I think sometimes some people's emotions are a little bit more heightened than others, right? And then you can make a rash decision based off of your emotions in that moment and jeopardize your whole business, right? So it's important to take control of that and know when to react and when not to react, right?
And that's key. That's key. Just in my personal experience, my wife and I worked a photo booth event years ago, and the person who was organizing it didn't have anything like together. It was very unprofessional. The lady was kind of talking to me kind of sideways, like, you know, she was telling me something and then kind of going back on what she said to me, and my wife had heard it. So like, why is she talking to you like that? Like, and it wasn't nothing like, you know, I'm too bad, but it's enough to cause that discourse, and, you know, could have just left the event. But I remember just in that moment, just kind of, you know, remaining calm. Like, I came here to do a job, because what the thing is, like, you don't want someone else's lack of professionalism to cause you to be unprofessional, because you can't control what other people do. You can only, I guess, control like how you react to it. So that kind of goes back to that, you know, emotional stability, emotional IQ.
You know what? You know what's so funny, man? I don't know if a lot of people watch this show. You know, this is my favorite show, is Snowfall, right? So, so look, So there's a scene where a guy tells the main character pretty much, he said, the thing that I like about you is you always are about business. It's never personal. And I think that, once you make it personal or make it about your feelings and things like that, it takes away from your judgment, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it just kind of go hand in hand with what we were talking about. So, man, always keep it professional. Always keep it about business, man. And never make it about your emotions of how you feeling, what you think they said. Because sometimes people say some off-the-wall stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But you got to get the business done, get whatever you came there for, and make sure that everything happens the way that you planned it to.
And I love Snowfall now as well because you put me onto it. I will give you credit for that. And what I like about that scene that you're referencing, and we'll probably have to put a link to it.
You know what I always respect about you, Saint? You was always about business. It was never personal. Even when I ain't like and he did some up but I could respect it because it was consistent. But now, you break your own rules. And I can't respect that.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
Even though he worked under, like, the main character, Franklin, mm-hmm. he worked under him, and he was like, even if I didn't agree with the direction you were going, I knew that it was always about business. And he was like, you're consistent with that. Now, when you're consistent, then, people are like, okay, well, if I don't agree with it, I didn't agree last time, but he's consistent. But when you start wavering, mm-hmm. then that's where people's like, I don't know if I can necessarily fall in line now. And like, I don't have any employees under me, but I would think that if you have, you're a CEO of a business, you have to have that consistency, or else you might lose control of the room.
Man. And then it really goes back to one of the points that you brought up is how do you develop that mental toughness to keep that consistency?
So mental toughness, I think is something that let me ask you. I'm gonna flip it, and then I'm gonna come back to your question.
All right, go ahead.
Do you think that mental toughness is something that you develop at an early age, or is something mm-hmm. that you can develop at a later age?
I think you could develop at any age.
Okay.
You got to be put in enough scenarios to know when to be tough and when not to. So I think I'll give an example for me.
Uh-huh. And then I'll come back and answer the question.
All right. I know when I was starting off in business, right, I didn't have mental toughness, right? I didn't have the stomach to, get through certain situations. I didn't have the mental capacity to kind of stick things out and stuff like that. But it was me getting put in enough situations where, I'm mentally tough to handle a hard situation if I got put into it. So I think it's just more about experience, right? Experiencing toughness and being able to distinguish whether or not, like I say, to handle a situation one way or another, man. It's about just being tough.
And I agree. I think that you can develop it at any age, but I think that there's an added benefit when you do develop it at a younger age. And I think that's when I did.
I'm gonna challenge you on that.
Good. Okay, good. I like it. So I'm the youngest of seven. Okay. So I got 6 siblings, and I have a lot of older siblings. And in our culture as well, like when you're growing up, people gonna talk about you, like whether it's at home, at school. So you got to be able to deal with that stuff. But outside of even that, just dealing with like the negative things, I had a lot of people instill a lot of values in me. Like, I'm very confident in my abilities, and I believe in myself, and that started at a young age. And I think that's helped to kind of translate to every level that I try to ascend to, whether it's school, whether it's business. Like, I'm confident in myself and my abilities, which helps me to kind of be mentally tough. Like, if a problem presents itself, I was like, okay, like you said, our experiences kind of tell us, like, you can get through this. And like, even life experiences, just like with your family, we both got kids. When your kids are sick,
kid, not kids. I only got one.
Oh, well, I said we both got kids. I mean, collectively,
I know.
I got my son, you got your daughter.
Yeah.
So, I mean, with stuff like that, I mean, it helps you to be tough all around. But I think it helps you to have this mental approach that you can persist through things. You can get through things. But what were you going to say?
Yeah, so my question for you then is, for somebody who's younger, right? You said that if they're younger, then it might be better. If they're younger, and I mean, how do you develop a mental toughness when you're younger? Some young people don't know how to handle it and they fold. So is it better when they get tough? I mean, when they get older, that they develop that mental toughness at a later age? Because, I mean, kids, they already dealing with their emotions. They don't know, how to control them. So how do you, decipher that?
It's a different climate today than the climate that we grew up in.
Absolutely.
And I will say that. So, like some of the experiences that you and I went through, I wouldn't want my son to go through, I guess. And I'm sure you wouldn't want your daughter to go through. But, sometimes we are I don't want to say the product of our environments, but a byproduct of, the things that we experience. So just growing up, and luckily, like, I didn't have people around who was just always talking about me.
Right.
They were joking on me, but then they were also instilling those positive things in me as well. So I think I got like a healthy blend of the two. But it helped me to know that when I get into the real world, it's not sweet. you know what to expect.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wasn't shocked, when somebody told me I wasn't doing something right, or if somebody provided some constructive criticism. When you develop that mental toughness, it helps you to kind of avoid getting offended when people are trying to help you in an unconventional manner. So some people don't know how to talk to people, but what they're saying might be valid, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense.
I had some supervisors who weren't good people persons. I don't know how you would say it.
It's people's people, but let's not. Yeah. No, I don't know.
You know
bro.
what I'm talking about. And
I got you.
listeners do.
Because I almost butchered that too. So
yeah, so they weren't a people's person, but they had a lot of wisdom. They just didn't know how to present it. So if you can not take that stuff to heart, if you're getting chewed out by a boss or something like that, then you can kind of peel back those layers and get the message that's going to help you to be better. I don't know if you had, like, if you played sports, but we had some coaches who were tough on us. And the purpose behind it is to make us better, to push us. And that's the same with, like, family growing up. They might be hard on you, but it's to push you to become the best version of yourself. So that's where I'm talking about, like, the mental toughness that I developed younger.
So it kind of leads us to that next point, right? So when they're pushing you, is it because they see something in you, right? Like traits that like amplifies, I don't know, greatness or, potential and stuff like that? Do you think that's why they they're hard on you? That's okay.
I will say, I mean, I think it might be because they see something in you, or it's because they don't see something in you that they need to see in you, right?
Okay.
So and I've seen it both ways. Like, I've mentioned before, I played football, in high school, and I had coaches who was pushing me when I wouldn't, like, run, full speed during some of our practice stuff. And they know I'm capable of it, but they just got to push you to, execute. And sometimes we see that in business too.
So how do you nurture, like we spoke about earlier, how do you nurture traits that's linked to high potential?
First you got to be able to spot it. And it's a delicate balance. And I think that's why everybody can't be the boss. When we're talking about, like, nurturing traits that are linked to high potential, it's spotting those things and then cultivating it. And I think for us, if we're entrepreneurs, sometimes it's finding those traits within yourself and you got to nurture it. If I know that I love photography, let me find out how I can be the best photographer. Let me find out how I can link that photography to another aspect. Okay, I love real estate. Let me start doing real estate photography. It takes a lot of self-evaluation. But for you to even answer that question though, like when we're talking about nurturing those traits linked to that high return, like how do you spot those things?
Return for me isn't always monetary, right? It's what in return am I getting? Is it my time? right? Is it high return in time? Is it high return in me working for myself? I mean, it has to meet all my credentials and all my, my checkpoints or whatever, my checklists or whatever. So for me, it's high potential for pay, high return as far as like time.
Yeah.
Right. Once it meets that, we all good.
And I think that's a good, way to gauge things. And I saw something on Instagram I've been talking about earlier this week, because we're recording on a Thursday. But I saw something on Instagram that said, like, when you start valuing things in the amount of time that it takes, like if you're working, it will really shift how you spend your money and how you spend your time. Like if a pair of Jordans cost $250 and I make $10 an hour, I'm not looking at it as, $250. That's 25 hours worth of work that I'm doing.
That I had to do to get that,
Yeah. So, I mean, in economics, we always talk about, like, your opportunity cost, which is your next highest valued alternative. So, like, what do you have to give up to gain something? And when you really look at time as, like, our most valuable asset, and you look at how much time you might have to give up in order to gain something, it really might shift your perspective of if it's really worth it. Because I think, like you said, man, sometimes we could just go for the money. Like, man, I could do this, I can make a quick $3,000. But by doing that, that's going to take me away from my family, like for the next couple of weeks. Is it worth that trade-off? And at the end of the day, it always comes down to those trade-offs that we make.
Yep, 100%, man.
So we've been kind of jumping around in terms of like our 6 topics, man. But I like it. So we talked about building the growth mindset, which was the first one. We talked about improving your emotional intelligence. We talked about developing your mental toughness. We talked about nurturing traits linked to high, potential rewards. Now, how do you? And then I think did we talk about like the intrinsic motivators?
No.
Okay,
that's a good one, man. That's a really good one. So what would your intrinsic motivation be?
Man, I'm in love with the process. For me,
hey, well, if I could drop this mic that's standing up here, man, I'd drop it, man. For real.
And that's the thing. Like, I like seeing things evolve, and like it can replicate, itself. So like, and for me, like every semester is different. Like even though the material that I'm seemingly teaching is the same, different students bring in different perspectives. So I love as I'm progressing through the semester and you're seeing students like catching on, things start clicking. At the beginning of the semester, maybe they weren't all the way into it. It might have been quiet and reserved, but towards the end of the semester, they're the ones raising their hands, and trying to contribute to the conversations. So I love that process, how things just naturally evolve. If we're looking at, real estate and renovating properties to flip them, that process of taking something that was abandoned and, thrown to the side and seeing how you can, go in and make it beautiful and then sell it, And then for you, like, with wholesaling, I'm sure that's just a game, Like, let me see if I can get this person to really,
You know what? It's funny you say that, right? And I hope you can link this real quick clip of Inky Johnson, right? And he talks about it, man. He say, man, everybody wants a trophy. Everybody wants a trophy, but they never want to play the game, right? And he goes back to say something along the lines of, you can't want to be successful without falling in love with the process.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, and it is for me, man. I enjoy the game, right? And for me, it's all about the game. Can I get them on the phone? Can I close this deal? Can I make this happen? Can I do what people say that I couldn't do, right? And seeing that process all the way through. So for me, the money's cool, but I enjoy the process, the up and down of it, the adrenaline that kind of keeps me going.
Yeah.
Man, I wouldn't trade the process for nothing. Like if somebody asks, would you want $1 million the easy way or work for it? I would rather work for it because it feels so good when you do get it.
Exactly. And you kind of reap the benefits of all the hard work that you put in. And I think when we talk about like these intrinsic motivators or things that, cause us to fall in love with the process, one of the things that you have to do is you have to love to challenge yourself. In order to be intrinsically motivated, you have to constantly be in a position where you're trying to move yourself forward, challenging yourself to do things that you haven't done in the past. Like you said, every new deal is a new deal. Like all the stuff that you used on the last one, maybe it might help, but you're dealing with a whole new person. So you got to kind of find ways to like, okay, what can I do to get this deal closed? What type of approach should I take? And then it's just a game of chess,
Oh yeah.
They make a move, you make a move. They make a move, you make a move.
And it's fun, man. It's fun.
Yeah. And I think anybody who's like an entrepreneur, you gotta love the process of whatever it is that you're doing. Me and my wife talk about it all the time because she's a business owner as well, and she has like a crafting business and a t-shirt business. Sometimes she would get orders for individuals who might be a little bit more difficult to work with, and that can cause frustration. But when she actually gets into the process of, putting her, crafter's hat on and, saying like, okay, I want to see if this works. Let me take this approach with it. That's where the joy is found. So, and I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs, the joy isn't, you don't get in it for the money. Of course you want to make money, but you got to love what you're doing to keep pushing through.
Yeah, because if you're not loving what you're doing, like what are you doing in the first place? Why even do it? If you don't like getting up in the morning grinding it out for your business, I mean, why even do it? Why get up? Because it's all. I think that's the thing that separate entrepreneurs, right, from people who just work a strict 9 to 5. That's it. Like they don't have a side business, nothing. Is that entrepreneurs love the process. They love the thought of building something, like you said, something that never was to something that is. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the beautiful part about it, man.
And then that kind of really segues us into that last one that we have to cover, which is strengthening your willpower. Now, when I think of like willpower, I automatically go to like your ability to persevere through challenges, which is something that every entrepreneur, as a matter of fact, everybody in, working, any person, you have to persevere through things in your personal life. But I think it's more so like for, your business owners, your entrepreneurs, because there's so many additional challenges that come with entrepreneurship that might not be there in your traditional 9 to 5.
When I look at willpower, like you said, it's able to kind of get through hard times, right? Being able to persevere through, difficult times, whatever the case may be. I agree 100%, man. But I guess the real question for me to you, and I know you threw that and I want to throw it back, is how do you strengthen those, right? Like, is it something that somebody has to teach you how to strengthen that willpower to kind of get through? Something that you read up on, or something that just kind of comes with time through, through failures and stuff like that? Like, what is it for you?
I would say that last thing that you just said. I mean, it's something that comes with time. As you go through stuff and you overcome it, it helps to build that level of, what's the word that I'm looking for? That level of, I guess, belief in yourself that you can continue to do this. If I'm an entrepreneur, I'll just use photography for an example. If I don't like doing weddings. Like if I'm shooting a wedding, and I've completed it, it lets me know like I could do another one, It's just something that experience teaches you. And I think that's kind of like the residual message for this conversation today. Experience is the best teacher, and you're going to learn one way or another. It's either you're going to learn that what you were doing was working, or you're going to learn that what you were doing needs to be improved upon.
You got it.
So, I mean, what out of all the 6 of those, which one would you say is the most important?
I would say, man, the one that's probably most important is probably number 2, which is improve your emotional intelligence. It's because, man, I've been there, right? And I think for me, I learned from that experience, right? Being able to have emotional intelligence. So for me, it's personal. So I could see, how I was before and how I am now. And, dude, it's a total 180, man.
For me, I guess I will go with the first one, which was develop or build that growth mindset. Because I think if you don't have that growth mindset to kind of push yourself to start doing new things or shifting your perspective of what you're capable of, then sometimes you probably will just remain stagnant in life, in business,
Agreed.
in general, and not even give yourself the opportunity to reach and unlock your potential. So I think it does start with like your mindset. I'm a firm believer of like everything is internal, and what's in your mind tends to translate to your actions and what you believe that you're able to accomplish. So I would say the growth mindset. But I'm curious to see what our listeners and viewers think. If you agree with any of these 6, if you disagree with some of these, we would love to get some feedback and kind of hear your thoughts on it.
That's another episode of the Wolf and the Doctor podcast. Again, I'm your host, Glenn Curry, alongside my co-host, Dr. John Devereaux. And whatever you're listening to, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment below.